Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and Miss Universe 1941.
So true. You got the sash and you got the wave down.
Tiara.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to have the tiara.
You know, I look great in an evening gown. You guys
still
know.
Looks great.
Yeah.
So true. So true. Yeah, he's waving. He's doing the wave. It's pretty good. Wow. It's pretty good, I have to say.
Yeah.
So we are here at the end of our season on the films of 1941. And as we always do, although we didn't do it last season because we had the kind of special retrospective anniversary thing going on, but as we usually do, we are doing an epilogue to look back at the season, at our various categories, what we talked about, what we could have talked about, other notable movies from this year, and some of your suggestions that we got on social media. So always good to wrap things up this way and reflect on our experience and, meditate a bit on the year in film.
Reflection and meditation. That's what we're all about here on Awesome Movie.
It is. Maybe put on this episode, close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and hear what we have to say about the films of 1941. So we started off with our box office champion episode, which was Sergeant York, which we were not particularly fans of, but it also kind of kicked off this running theme because it's 1941. We're in the midst of World War II. The United States enters World War II at the very end of the year. We had a lot of this kind of nationalistic cinema, films related to the war, propaganda films and stuff like that. And so Sergeant York was one of those. And you look at the box office from 1941, and among the top 10 in the box office are multiple other like nationalistic or military themed films. You've got Yank in the RAF, which is a comedy. You've got They Died with Their Boots On, Caught in the Draft, I think is the comedy, is the Bob Hope comedy, and as well as then the Yank in the RAF and They Died with Their Boots On, which is about Custer. And so this is something on the minds, I think, of all film goers this year. Other top 10 films of the year that we did not discuss, Honky Tonk, Men of Boys Town, and Ziegfeld Girl, and Louisiana Purchase, a bunch of movies I had never heard of in the top 10 here.
I do love a good honky tonk, though, Josh. So,
do you?
Yeah. She blew my nose, and then she blew my mind.
Yeah, that's a little later.
This is what I took away. I was not very fond of Sergeant York, although I really did enjoy researching the real Alvin York. But what I remember most from this is that Gary Cooper beat Orson Welles for Best Actor in an insane pick. And that's no offense to Gary Cooper, who definitely deserves his love. But come on, bro. What are we doing here?
Yeah, and that was a theme for most of the categories at the Oscars with Citizen Kane, aside from its screenplay win, as we talked about in that episode. And I'm sure it'll arise again as we go on here.
Yeah, and then I'll say, come on, bro. What are we doing here? That's my thing, Josh. Josh, speaking of Citizen Kane, there were only really two choices for our first feature, Citizen Kane, which we're speaking of. And the one we went with, the Maltese Falcon, John Huston, Humphrey Bogart, the blueprint for the film noir. And I had never seen it before. I love this movie, and it really just made me want to watch more noirs. So good. Humphrey Bogart, was once ranked the number one leading man of all time by an AFI poll. I would probably say Cary Grant or Paul Newman, but Humphrey Bogart is as good a pick as you can get there. Just such a great movie.
It is a great movie, and I was glad to revisit that. And Humphrey Bogart is amazing, and I think there's a couple, or at least one other Bogart thing that we might mention here as we go on.
The Dingus? Is it the Dingus?
The Dingus, his word for the Falcon.
Yeah.
You really liked that one. I'm glad that you got to say Dingus again.
You know what else I liked about it, Josh, is it's a noir, but there's some campiness. There's some great humor. Sidney Greenstreet, Peter Lorre. We just really loved the whole construction of this. And it got me to watch more John Huston movies, who we're all fans of. So just the whole thing was a great experience.
Yeah, it was. It was a fun movie to revisit. And of course, we weren't going to leave out Citizen Kane. but we got to that later in the season, so we were able to include John Huston's debut. A couple other like sort of B-level but very prolific old Hollywood directors. George Sidney debuted with Free and Easy, and Irving Rapper with Shining Victory, but those weren't really under consideration for us, I don't think.
But George Sidney, when I was at UNLV, he used to come in sometimes, and we would watch these huge sequences where he would be like directing 800 horses and stuff like that. He's a real classic director, and I hope we do cover him sometime.
We went next to the Venice Film Festival in an odd year, as we talked about for Venice, when it was kind of co-opted by the Italian fascists. We talked about the Iron Crown, the winner of the Mussolini Cup for the best Italian film at that festival, which Dave was a fan of.
So. Fascist Dave over there.
I learned a lot about myself this season.
Yeah, Dave really made some interesting discoveries. So because it was co-opted by the fascists, basically everything in competition at the festival that year was submitted only by countries that were aligned with the Axis powers. Nothing that I was familiar with, but films in competition include Honeysuckle and Closed Door, which were both from Argentina, Nocturnal Butterfly from what was Czechoslovakia at the time, the Hungarian film Flames, and the winner of the Mussolini Cup for Best Foreign Film was the German Nazi propaganda movie Uncle Kruger.
Yeah, really excited for when the idiot in charge takes over like the Austin Film Festival, and all the submissions will be from Dinesh D'Souza, North Korea, Putin-approved movies, and maybe we get something in there from like
the Resurrection of the Christ.
I was going to say, yeah,
yeah. So Angel Studios. Actually, I don't even want to put them in there. They do way better than that, so that's not really fair to them. I take it back, Angel Studios. You keep doing what you're doing, baby.
Okay.
Also, that movie was terrible. And Dave, you're a Nazi. No, I don't mean that about you. Josh, the ones we had for our flop were All That Money Can Buy, a.k.a. The Devil and Daniel Webster, which we did cover. And I thought, diminishing returns for me. And then Mr. Bug Goes to Town. Have you ever seen Mr. Bug Goes to Town, Josh?
I haven't, but we actually talked about it when we did our Gulliver's Travels episode in 1939, because it is the second feature from the Fleischer brothers after the big success of Gulliver's Travels. And it was the fact that it failed at the box office basically killed Fleischer Studios as a viable animation kind of competitor to Disney. So I'd be very curious to see it. I think it's probably not very good, but it is an important kind of landmark in animation history.
And we remember the Mr. Bug series when we talked about that. There were all the shorts and everything. And we do like that style of animation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we were sort of underwhelmed with Gulliver's Travels as a story, but the animation style is cool. And I think it's a shame that the Fleischer brothers never got the chance to build on that legacy the way that Disney did.
Yeah. Disney might be a good sponsor, Walt Disney, not per se, of this new Austin Film Festival that we're talking about. So.
Yeah, you're really building up a great coalition there to bring the Trump Cup to life.
Yeah, when the jury helmed by John Voight gives its announcements, we'll be in good shape.
Yes, indeed.
Tear up all the movies.
So, our documentary episode featured Target for Tonight, the British propaganda film, Wartime Propaganda, and continued on that theme. There weren't a whole lot of options documentary-wise. Documentary filmmaking didn't really come into its own until probably like the 1960s. But as we talked about with Target for Tonight, it was the first documentary feature to win an Oscar. It was awarded a kind of special honorary Oscar before the competitive category began the following year, alongside a film called Kukan, which was another propaganda film about the Japanese, or the Chinese resistance, rather, against the Japanese invasion during World War II. The one other documentary that I noted down is a film called The Forgotten Village, which was about life in a traditional small Mexican village. It was written by John Steinbeck and possibly completely staged.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up. I was but I didn't remember it.
Well, I'm glad that I could remember it for you.
Josh, you ever read Great Expectations?
Are you going to say you thought it would be better?
Yep, let's move on.
Nice.
I have read Great Expectations, actually, and seen at least one film version.
I think I have too. Yeah, you're a real Miss Havisham for the podcast here. Josh, the next pick was yours, so I'll tell everyone about it. You had Sullivan's Travels and The Little Foxes down there. Tell us why you had those options there, Josh.
Well, we went with Sullivan's Travels, which was a great Preston Sturges movie. And I was looking at my top 10 from 1941. Those were the two that you just mentioned that I was picking from. And we, of course, ended up talking about The Little Foxes later. But I do also love The Lady Eve, which is another Preston Sturges movie from that year. And The Wolfman is also on my top 10, which I think was a possibility for us, the Universal horror film. And Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion, which may come up later.
You know what, Dave? I got to say it. Josh is just throwing heaters in 1941. I like both of the picks that we've watched so far, and excited. You know, I'm a Hitchcock guy, but Josh, really, you're shining this year, baby.
Well, thank you. And I think if you enjoyed Sullivan's Travels, you would like The Lady Eve as well. Another excellent Preston Sturges film. So
it was good to get into him because, like I said, it was a blind spot for me, and I really did like most of Sullivan's Travels there.
Yeah, good stuff. So our foreign film, we talked about Ornamental Hairpin, the Japanese film, and we considered another Japanese film, The 47 Ronin, which is a 3 to 4 hour 2-part samurai epic. And we decided that was maybe a little too much for us to handle.
But we could have done it because at least Dave and I could have done it because we're Wu-Tang, loyalists. So, but look, they're both worthwhile of covering. So we went with another much shorter, excellent pick from the Japanese Cinema Society.
Yeah, it was certainly a worthwhile topic to discuss. And another Japanese film that was a possibility, the Yasujiro Ozu film, Brothers and Sisters of the Toda Family. But of course, we've discussed Ozu in our 1953 season with Jason's favorite film, Tokyo Story, that he watched.
I watched twice now.
Right. I love that you watched it twice to confirm that you didn't like it.
I liked it more the second time. So, and our man was in both of those movies, the head of the family and the professor. So.
Yes, he was. The other movie that we considered, Stormy Waters, a French film from Jean Gremillon, who's kind of I don't know if I would say cult, but he's a lesser known but important figure in French cinema, I think.
I don't know much about him, but I know a lot about Godard and Truffaut. So,
sure, they're more famous.
Yeah, I'm just kidding with you, of course. Romer. Let's go after that. We went to animation. Of course, our pick was Dumbo, which I quite enjoyed. And I'm not just saying that because I like to present myself in such a way. Mr. Bug Goes to Town and a movie I don't know, Princess Iron Fan.
It's a Chinese film. Yeah, I wasn't really familiar with it either, but it looked interesting to possibly check out. It was China's effort to compete with the feature animation that had begun in the U.S. with Disney and the Fleischers, as we mentioned, and is done in a kind of rotoscope style like Gulliver's Travels.
Well, that would be interesting to see. Also, I like the idea of them competing with us as opposed to come in, shoot a few movies. We'll release a few of your movies. Now that we've learned everything, we don't need your movies anymore.
Yeah, that's
kind of what happened, right? With our box office there for the last 20 years. It was more important for Americans, film companies to make movies that would play in China. And they love big spectacles. And that's part of why the IP boom was so huge. And then China was like, we're good. We could do these on our own. And now we're stuck with a lot of crap here in America, Josh.
And then they produce a lot. I feel like those Chinese blockbusters are also kind of crap. But clearly it all began with Princess Iron Fan.
Yes.
Princess Iron Fan would be a good name for a heel wrestler.
Jason, next was your pick. How did that go?
It went great. I think we could all agree on that, Josh. I feel like I killed it, and we're all very proud of me. My choices were, I had Sullivan's Travels on there because I had never seen it. I had the Maltese Falcon on there. We watched both of those, so I feel really good. I got multiple picks in. Suspicion, the Hitchcock movie, which we'll talk more about. And Josh, I went with the Philadelphia Story because I'm in the bag for Mr. Cary Grant, and I like those fast-talking, real screwball comedies when they're done well. You had Grant, you had Jimmy Stewart, and you had Katharine Hepburn, the three legends kind of doing their thing. So it was really, really fun to revisit.
Yeah, I really enjoyed checking that one out again as well as I did with the Maltese Falcon. Dave didn't like it though, so Dave loved the fascist movie. Didn't like the Philadelphia Story.
I liked Ornamental Hairpin. So
there you go. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, gee. Yes. What a shock. You liked a movie from the country that aligned with Germany in World War II.
I don't just pile on poor Dave for his wide-ranging cinematic taste.
That was our friend George Cukor, whose name I can never pronounce right, but I'm glad we covered him as well.
Yes, yes. And I'm glad that you actually liked this film as opposed to the last George Cukor film that we covered.
Well, I don't remember what that was, but I had seen... Oh, yeah, the women's terrible. We all know that. But I had seen the Philadelphia Story before, so I knew I liked it. Yeah. And you liked it.
I liked it, and I love The Women, which had been my pick in 1939.
Yeah, but that's weird because it's so bad.
Okay.
All right, you're up, Josh. Tell us what we did next.
Well, we went and did a sort of dual win. We basically just kind of made a category so that we could talk about Citizen Kane. It was the National Board of Review, as well as the New York Film Critics Circle winner for Best Picture. The National Board of Review puts out a top 10 list. And so some other movies on their top 10 that we didn't talk about this season: The Stars Look Down, which I believe is a British film; High Sierra, and there's Humphrey Bogart again, as well as John Huston, which I happened to watch just as we were doing this season. It's with Thriller with Humphrey Bogart and Ida Lupino, it's entertaining, but uneven, and I think is not as cool as I hoped for a movie starring Humphrey Bogart and Ida Lupino as criminals on the run would be. But it's still worth checking out.
Did they steal a dingus?
There are no dinguses.
Well, then it's not for me. We had to do Citizen Kane. And if that's what it takes, us making up a category to get there, then we're going to do it.
We are. I mean, usually that category is another film festival.
Right. So it counts.
Yeah, it's fine. And, we can do whatever we want. It's our podcast. But other movies on that list: Road to Zanzibar, the latest installment in that Hope and Crosby series, The Lady Eve, and a film called Tom, Dick, and Harry with Ginger Rogers, which I also happened to watch during this season. And I love Ginger Rogers comedies, but it's not the best. It's a weird movie to have on your top 10 movies of the year list.
I don't know anything about it. I do want to say, as I mentioned, I think we've all seen Citizen Kane multiple times, and I just liked it so much more this time than the first two times. And just great. If you say it's the best movie of all time, I'm cool with that. I don't think it is, but I'm cool with it. So
yeah, I mean, we all came to the shocking conclusion that we think Citizen Kane is good.
Better than John Dielman, you cucks over there at Sight and Sound.
Okay, not going to let that one go.
Well, why should I, Josh? After that, we did the Best Picture, I believe, Josh, because that's something we do every year. They give it out at the Oscars, and then whoever wins, that's who we cover. The winner was How Green Was My Valley, the John Ford movie, which none of us really got into. It's all right. Yeah, Josh, we have covered a good amount of these other nominees. Obviously, Citizen Kane, which we all think should have been the winner, probably. Maltese Falcon, which also would have been a worthy winner. The Little Fox is another worthy winner. I like all those movies that we've covered. Sergeant York, Suspicion, excited for that coming up. The ones that we aren't getting to, but we're also nominated: Blossoms in the Dust, Here Comes Mr. Jordan, and One Foot in Heaven.
Hold Back the Dawn is also on there.
There's a lot of nominees.
Yeah, this was. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but this was before they reduced the number of nominees down to 5, which was the way it was for decades. And now, of course, we have larger numbers, and we have for a little while. But for the bulk of Oscar history, I think it was just 5 nominees for Best Picture. But this is not the case here. And as with the box office champion, the box office top 10 list, I was surprised at how many films in here I not only haven't seen, but hadn't even heard of. But I guess, that's what you get when you have an expanded list. I'm sure in a little while we'll look at, nominees from some recent years and people will say, what? I never even heard of that one.
Or, I'm looking at Best Director. John Ford won for How Green Was My Valley. And Ford, obviously an absolute legend, deserves many, many awards and won many, many awards. But I'm surprised he won it. Obviously, we know what happened at Wells. He was kind of railroaded. But I would have given William Wyler with The Little Foxes the nod, if not those, if not Wells. The other two were Alexander Hall for Here Comes Mr. Jordan and Howard Hawks, who I love, but Sergeant York wasn't my favorite.
Right. I mean, and as we were just saying, I mean, the injustices to Citizen Kane at the Oscars are numerous and have come up multiple times. But I agree. We were all kind of lukewarm on How Green Was My Valley, not John Ford's best film, certainly. So next up was Dave's pick. And how'd that go for you, Dave?
I had some fun with that. We went with some Abbott and Costello, Hold That Ghost. As is the case when we go to these very early seasons, there's not a lot that I've actually seen that I could really pick from. I could have went with some other Abbott and Costello movies. There was, I think, 3 that season. You brought up The Wolfman. That was something that I was thinking about. Also, The Black Cat, another Universal horror thing. And Man-Made Monster was the other one that I was thinking about, which I've never seen, but it just sounded pretty fun to me.
Yeah, I mean, those are all Universal horror releases from that year. And of course, The Wolfman, by far the most famous one, but usually those are fun. And I feel like you already picked a random cat horror movie for us one time that you had never seen before. So
yeah.
I would watch The Wolfman, but when doing our prep for Hold That Ghost, I saw Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman, but not in the film Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman. In the film Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, where the Wolfman is also in it, Josh. And so is Dracula.
This sounds like an Abbott and Costello bit that you're doing.
We met the Wolfman in this bit. Yeah. I had actually rewatched the Wolfman not that long ago when I went to the Joe Bob Briggs Drive-In Jamboree. So I got to see it at the drive-in here, the Westwind Drive-In, and that was cool. And that's a one that I feel like, even though I mentioned it as a possible pick, I had kind of mixed reactions to it when I'd seen it before. But it's a really well-made and effective horror film with some cool early special effects. So would have been a fun one for us to talk about. But we know that if there's some lowbrow comedy available to talk about,
I think you're understating the abilities of Abbott and Costello with that statement. So.
Yeah, no, I'm not that Abbott and Costello are not important in the world of comedy, even if I'm not a fan. But whatever there is along those lines, I feel like Dave's gonna gravitate toward it.
They might surprise us one day and pick like a Merchant Ivory film or something.
Yeah, Dave's gonna pick a
Remains of the Day
3-hour Eastern European art movie. Yeah. I don't think so. So we mentioned Man-Made Monster, which was a possible cult classic pick. We actually talked about Hell's a Poppin', speaking of lowbrow comedy, which Dave also loved. But Man-Made Monster was a possibility. Also on the comedy front, Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, which was the W.C. Fields film from that year, and a film called The Blood of Jesus, which is a sort of outsider art religious parable that looked fascinatingly weird. But we went with Hell's a Poppin'.
It's cool that there were some weird movies, and we also had All That Money Can Buy on that list. So there were some weird experimental things here. I was not a fan of Hell's a Poppin', but I can obviously see the value in it. So
yeah, and of course we did talk about All That Money Can Buy as the flop, and Dave and I both like that. I feel like that's a movie that justifiably has been rediscovered. I know, Jason, you were not a fan.
I was a fan of your impression of that guy's laugh, though.
Oh, in Hell's a Poppin'. Yeah. I meant All the Money Can Buy, but yeah, both.
Yeah.
So that's Hugh Herbert.
Can you give it to us, Josh?
What did he? Sort of like a woohoo.
He nailed it again, Dave.
Yeah, so. That's the only impression I can manage because it involves one sound.
You're crushing it, though. So for our audience choice, Josh, you put together a great list when we started this thing, and a lot of these we kind of mentioned. Universal horror, we had The Wolfman, The Black Cat, Man-Made Monster. You had Abbott and Costello in there, who were just on top of the world at this point in time, other than behind the team of Hell's a Poppin', right? They had Buck Privates, In the Navy, Hold That Ghost, and Keep 'Em Flying, all in the same year. You also had a category for top 40s franchises, Tarzan's Secret, Treasure, Road to Zanzibar, and Shadow of the Thin Man. And the one we went with, of course, though, was Betty Davis, and our audience came through. The choices were The Great Lie, The Bride Came, COD, and The Little Foxes, which is etched in my mind because of Betty Davis's reaction with the swelling music behind her as her husband struggles to get up the stairs and get his medicine in time before he dies, as she just sits there and lets him wither.
Fantastic moment in that movie. And I'm obviously, as we talked about, I love Betty Davis, and I was pleased with the audience choice there. Those other two, I would have been fun to talk about. The Great Lie is decent and co-stars Mary Astor, who we talked about in The Maltese Falcon. The Bride Came COD is kind of a dopey comedy with James Cagney alongside Bette Davis. Little Fox is definitely the best of those three. And even though it makes sense that we didn't do it, I did kind of have a soft spot for that 1940s franchises category, just as a reminder that even, as we think of our modern age of IP or whatever, here's the fourth Tarzan movie or whatever, and that Road to series with Hope and Crosby and The Thin Man, which that might be like the fourth one of that as well, that they were milking these things back then as well.
Right. And not just that, we covered multiple movies that were, successful plays, 3 of them at least. So, there was all that there this season.
There was. So as always, when we began the season, we posted online asking you, our listeners, about some of your favorite films from this year. Not as many responses as expected when we get these older years opposed to more recent years, but we did get some good suggestions from various listeners, and we appreciate everyone on our social media, mainly on Facebook, on our page, as well as on the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces Facebook group, which we enjoy participating in. So my sister, Brandy Bell, she suggested the
Full disclosure.
Yes, full disclosure, she is in fact related to me. She suggested The Lady Eve, which we mentioned, as well as Ball of Fire, the Howard Hawks comedy with Barbara Stanwyck and Gary Cooper, which we had kind of discussed as a possible bonus, but all, or at least a couple of those people we've talked about already this season. I haven't seen that one.
Me neither, but I do like the song Great Balls of Fire.
Also unrelated.
Goodness gracious.
Our former guest, ML Compton, suggested Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is Alfred Hitchcock's only comedy. The Reluctant Dragon, which is a sort of behind-the-scenes movie about Disney. And he mentioned also The Wolfman and Suspicion, the Hitchcock film.
I love the idea of Hitchcock comedy, though. That does sound interesting.
I have not seen that one, and I mean, I'm curious about it as well. But I think it's notable more for being a weird outlier than for being a good movie.
Like 1941, not the year, the Spielberg comedy.
Right. I just was discussing, I feel like this happened to me multiple times when I told people we were talking about 1941 on the podcast, and they thought I meant the Spielberg film.
Haha, that's a bit right out of Abbott and Costello.
So many Abbott and Costello-esque bits in this episode. Matt Stillman also suggested Ball of Fire and Lady Eve. He mentioned High Sierra as well. Jennifer Howell seconded both of these Barbara Stanwyck films, Lady Eve and Ball of Fire. We didn't get a chance to talk about Barbara Stanwyck this season, an iconic actress from this era. My favorite classic movie actress, says Jennifer Howell. Eric Langberg suggested In the Navy, the Abbott and Costello film. Christopher Page mentioned Meet John Doe, which he calls it a must-watch. And I haven't ever seen that one. That's a pretty famous film.
It's a must-watch, Josh.
I must watch it then.
Yeah, you should check it out. Dave, who's your favorite classic film actress?
Good
job. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have one.
It's a hard choice for me. I mean, I love Katharine Hepburn, but now, Josh, you got me on this Bette Davis good right now, and I'm really enjoying watching a lot of her stuff too.
Yeah, she's obviously, as I said, my favorite, not only classic film actress, but really my favorite actor of all from any period. But there's a lot of great, we talked about Katharine Hepburn here, but, some that we haven't talked about, like Jean Harlow and Joan Blondell are a couple favorites as well, Claudette Colbert. So, so much talent in Hollywood in this era. Finally, we have to give credit to Ryan Ulbrich, who always enjoys trying to suggest the worst options for us.
We got to take him up on one of these. So.
I feel like Ryan maybe struggled to come up with some good ones for this season. He suggested Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, the W.C. Fields film, which was a legit possibility for us. Something called Pudd'nhead, which looks to be sort of like a B-level comedy, a Soviet propaganda film called Fascism Will Be Defeated, and speaking of that guy with the laugh, a Hugh Herbert comedy, Meet the Chump, directed by Edward F. Klein, who did some ghost directing on Hell's a Poppin'. So I feel like we could have talked about several of these legitimately.
I mean, I'm open to it. Let's start the season now.
We'll just do some more Hugh Herbert films. We'll do a whole Hugh Herbert film festival.
I mean, we should do a whole season on the movies of 1941.
What an idea. So crazy to think of that.
I have a feeling, Josh, that 1941 will be reappearing on a holiday episode this coming year.
That is very possible. But in the meantime, should we do some announcements about what's coming up next for us?
Well, we kind of already hit the audience over the head with our bonus. We are going to do Suspicion. We haven't covered Hitchcock. We've tried to many times, and it just hasn't. We just couldn't get our schedules to match up with his. So I'm excited. Suspicion. I like that actor in there. You know that? Did you know I like him?
Cary Grant. Jason is a big Cary Grant fan.
A big Hitchcock fan too. So it's cool.
I am too, and it's been a long time since I saw Suspicion, so it'll be cool to revisit that. And if you are on the By David Rosen Patreon, that is where that bonus episode will be available. Some undetermined, like
earlier than the others.
1 to 7 days from now, I think, something like that.
Seems right.
Yeah. Josh, you said it would be fun to revisit. You know what else would be fun to revisit?
What?
This impression right here that we're gonna do for the next episode.
Yeah, you gotta work on it a little more. It's not as good as your, what was it, Walter Brennan?
Uncle,
you had a good Walter Brennan earlier this season.
No, it was Uncle Ben. I probably had a Walter Brennan, but it was
you
Uncle
did,
Ben
I think,
also
for Sergeant York. But yeah. So Dave, you want to give a little shout out for the Patreon and what's going on with that?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. You'll find bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. And you'll get that bonus episode an entire season ahead of time, but you'll also get Awesome Movie Year episodes as we record them and I edit them. They will go up there early, so you get to check them out in advance. And then also, lots of great stuff from Piecing It Together. And I'm currently compiling a soundtrack album that will be going up there exclusively. So lots of great stuff over there. Again, it's patreon.com/bydavidrosen.
Is that for the Pop-Ups movie?
Yeah, I wish. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think that's got to happen, right? So, no, but we appreciate everyone it's a small but loyal group, and everyone who signed up there. And we do our best to give you something to make your subscription worthwhile, so you can check out Suspicion.
Line Dave's pockets. We don't see a penny of it.
Well, maybe more people sign up. We'll revisit that revenue sharing.
I heard if more people sign up, Dave's going to be gifted a Qatari jet.
Oh boy,
that's it'll be financing that Pups movie.
There you go.
So in the meantime, then on our main feed, though, Jason, should we announce what our next season is?
Josh, we just looked back in time at an early Awesome Movie Year, so now I want to look as close to time as you'll let us. You have an arbitrary rule where you say we can't cover anything that's less than 10 years ago, but I feel like we should be able to. But I compromised with you 11 years ago, 2014. That's our next Awesome Movie Year.
It is. I feel like we've, here's some behind the scenes for you folks. We've talked about this many times. It's a film history retrospective podcast. 10 years is at least as much time as we need in order to have a perspective.
You're telling me you can't have a perspective on something from 2019 now?
I could have an opinion on it, but I feel like to place it in film history, it helps to have distance, and especially for some of our categories that are about how these films have aged and what kind of legacies they've had. But
I can tell you that Parasite's still a really good movie right now, even though it's less than 10 years ago.
It's not about whether the movies are good necessarily. It's about how they're placed in the culture.
First foreign picture, best picture winner. I think I could do that too.
We'll continue to have this discussion, but it'll be exciting to talk about 2014, and certainly very, very different. And that is one thing that I love about Awesome Movie Year, is that we are spanning such a wide range of film history, and we can go from 1941 to 2014 and talk about different kinds of films, but still fitting in with all our categories. So we look forward to that. I'm sure we'll have some questions about your favorite 2014 films coming up. So if you want to talk about that or anything else, you can check us out online and on social media.
That's right. We're at Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. Dave is at Awesome Movie Pod on X and the right-wing YouTube Rumble right there for you.
No.
I'm not on any of those.
We're not there at all.
I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or Jay Harris Comedy on all the things. Come out to an Eat This Comedy or a trivia party. Have some fun with us. Go for Jason on Letterboxd.
You can find some old stuff from me at joshbellhateseverything.com, including some stuff related to episodes that we did this season. I'm at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch any of the movies that we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. And shout out to Letterboxd user Andrew Dan, who has tagged us in several reviews recently from some of our older seasons. He wrote about Chungking Express, reviewed that from our 1994 season, and said, I keep expecting the stories to connect at the end, which I feel like makes sense for Chungking Express. That's a reasonable thing to expect.
I want to rewatch that with the whole trilogy, the trilogy there, the Wong Kar-wai trilogy, Josh. You know what I'm talking about there, Josh?
Yeah. His I don't know if it's an official trilogy, but
right.
You know, a lot of his films about that romantic longing with the same theme.
In the Mood for Love.
That's a great one. Yeah, you should definitely watch.
And what's the third one?
I'm not sure, but couple others. Andrew also reviewed Crumb and The Mask from our 1994 season, so we appreciate that. My aforementioned sister Brandy also will tag her reviews Awesome Movie Year sometimes. It was her idea to do this, so shout out to her as well.
Yeah,
and
thank
hope
you.
to hear from more of you on Letterboxd.
Did Andrew like those films?
He did, yeah.
Nice.
So,
the other one in the Wong Kar-wai trilogy is 2046.
Oh yeah, I have seen all three of those, and 2046 I think is actually like a specific sort of quasi sequel to In the Mood for Love, and all worth seeing. Excellent. Maybe we'll get to Wong Kar-wai again someday here.
1941.
Not in 1941 though. So also you could check out our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. You could also follow me on Letterboxd at By David Rosen. And also, I just want to shout out, during this season, we finally put the show on YouTube. And you guys have been killing it on there. I don't know. I still don't understand who listens.
I told you. I keep telling you guys this.
Audio-only podcasts on YouTube. But apparently a lot of people like Awesome Movie Year on there.
I have the more behind-the-scenes stuff. I've been championing this effort for years. But iron-fisted Josh over here and his Mussolini Cup values wouldn't let us jump on there. But finally, we did it. We broke through.
That is a mischaracterization of my position on this. I'm happy that we have the audio of our podcast on YouTube or anywhere that people listen to podcasts, and we are grateful for our listeners wherever you are, except maybe if you're on Rumble. We're not going to put the podcast on Rumble. That I'm going to put my foot down on.
I'm going to agree with you. Sorry, Dave. That's out.
Yeah. So, Jason, as we begin 2014, what is in our next episode?
2014, the biggest film of the year. It's a film that I have seen before. Spoiler alert, Josh. Guardians of the Galaxy. It's going to be timely because our man James Gunn is back out there on the other side of the superhero universe this time around.
Yeah, it's another chance for us to talk about Marvel. So tune in next time for Guardians of the Galaxy. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.